Okay, so before we get started, just want to acknowledge the county team that's here. It's a pretty big team tonight, and the reason for that is for the second half of this meeting, it's going to be a fun, interactive opportunity to engage, and so it takes quite a bit of staff to pull that off. I want to thank you guys for this opportunity, and just to let you know that Puna, you guys are the first ones to get this. So this is pretty exciting for all of us. You're going to be the first ones to go through this process, give us feedback about how you like it, how you don't like it, and more importantly, to engage on the content of the general plan. If you guys have questions at any time, I can take those, but I'd rather get this part done so that we can get to the fun stuff. Okay? Overview of the GP Comprehensive Review. For those that don't know what we've been doing for the past 4.5 years, I'll let you know what that's been about, how it relates to the Puna CDP, upcoming opportunities for the Action Committee to participate, and then we'll roll into tonight's mini speak out. As part of a planner's job, we have Kilo, who has been representing our planner throughout this process. And so a planner's job is really to understand a lot of trends and data, analyze trade-offs that can happen, provide information to public and stakeholders that might be making some of those decisions. And more importantly, not let our eyes roll out of our head as we move through this process. But all jokes aside, it's really our job to crunch all the data that's out there and present it in a format that folks can understand and provide feedback on. And the general plan is really the best tool that we have to do that. It is the comprehensive long-range policy document for the county. It talks about everything that I've heard tonight, from grubbing and grading to mass transit, the action committees, connectivity. It talks on all that stuff. And it's mandated by the state laws and also our county charter. And so it's something that we have to guide our decision making and our budget decisions. So it's a very important document. We initiated the update to this document in 2015, and we started with gathering initial input from the public and also action committees and county council. Then in 2016, we began the heavy lifts of research and analysis. We engaged with a consultant to do some scenario planning using geographic information software. 2017, we began to develop those goals and strategies. We had listening sessions with all of the county agencies to understand what their priorities and needs are. And 2018, we began to design the planning system, how the AC, how the CDP, how the GP, all these things fit together. We engaged with Smart Growth America to provide technical assistance of a fiscal impact analysis of our general plan. And we began putting the draft together. So here we now are in 2019. We're going to begin the review of that draft. It will hopefully conclude this fall, and we'll be submitting the revised draft to the Planning Commission by the end of the year. These are just some graphics that kind of show that same process. Things were moving at the same time in a lot of cases. There were some folks working on scenario planning, some folks working on research and development, understanding what the CDPs say about their land use and infrastructure needs, and also some of the goals and policies of those plans, and zipping up into our draft general plan. The general plan has a sustainability focus, and how this works is we really wanted to understand the connectivity between the different elements and our goals of being sustainable. And so we developed this crosswalk to help us recognize those connections and make sure that we are covering those bases. And so what happens is, if you crosswalk, the pillars of sustainability are the columns going down. the sections of our plan are the rows going across. And then you can get a closer look at how are we touching on natural resource planning and culture, as an example. And so each one of those intersections is a check for staff to be sure that our content is capturing those concepts. Something else that I heard mentioned was overlays. I think Anna mentioned overlays. Okay, so this is kind of a similar concept. We've been working in layers of planning, starting with our natural resource planning, adding on top of that infrastructure planning, economic and opportunity planning, placemaking. All of these have connections between each other, so they can't operate in silos. And so keeping that constant thread and that overlap has been important. And the land use planning is really what pulls those layers together, making sure that those areas are aligned. So quick overview of what those sections are and how the topics are covered under those sections. First section, that first layer that we were looking at is the natural resource planning. In there, we're handling protecting native habitats and wildlife, protecting coastal resources, managing streams and watersheds, managing geologic resources, ensuring air and noise quality, and mitigating and adapting to hazards and climate change. So unfortunately, when you make a draft document in paper, you have to find a place for things. And sometimes it might not be intuitive where those places are, and so there's been some shifts along the way about should this be here or there. When we were making those decisions, it was important to think about natural resources existing without humans. And what are we trying to do to mitigate our impacts to those resources? Rather than focusing on the uses of those resources, that's going to happen in our infrastructure section. So just trying to distinguish kind of the natural elements and how we're trying to protect them versus our use of natural elements. And that happens in this infrastructure planning section. So you can see managing water system resources. This is actually right out of the table of contents, but it gets a little bit hard because we have subsections and then we have subsections. But the importance of that is that under managing water system resources, we're talking about all water systems. And so we're talking about drinking water conservation, drinking water quality, drinking water prioritization, stormwater management, recycled water expansion, and wastewater, recognizing that all water is our resource and we need to be managing it appropriately. Then we go on to look at resource recovery and reducing waste, improving our transportation systems, expanding telecommunication access, and strengthening energy diversification. The third section of the plan is our economic and opportunity planning section. It seems light just looking at the bullets compared to the other sections, but there's a lot to unpack in this as well. Really, if you're looking at sustainability and self-sufficiency, a lot of it lands in this section. This is the first time the general plan is talking about food security and emphasizing housing for all, which is a different concept than what's been done in the past. So those are two really important pieces that are falling right now in the economic and opportunity planning section. Sorry, this is a little bit dry, but just kind of give you guys a taste of what to expect. Okay, so section 4 is the community placemaking section, and this is really the section that focuses on quality of life concepts. So looking at education facilities, keeping our communities healthy and safe, active living, our cultural and historic legacies, and protecting our scenic resources. So kind of all of those things that, again, affect our quality of life and make up our unique communities are in this section. And finally, to capture everything and make sure it's all in alignment, we have the land use planning section. Most of that is talking about compatibility. So we get into urban form, rural form, industrial resource, resort, agricultural, and conservation and open. And then there are some unique cases like the special management area and our Malka forests that have their own land use planning sections in those. Okay, so that's a brief overview of what's in the draft. I want to talk about how it relates to the Puna CDP. As we designed the planning system, we were working with three main objectives. One is to eliminate the confusion and conflict among the different plans. The second was to provide the CDPs a more formal role as part of the general plan. And the third was about integrating and standardizing those plans. One of the first steps we took during the research and analysis phase of this was looking across the CDPs for consistency and alignment. We found that the CDPs were all consistent, with exceptions being specific local mapping issues or infrastructure priorities. But that was a great relief to us because we were able to capture all those consistencies and pull them up into the general plan as island-wide strategies. We also reviewed things that were covered by the CDPs because they happened after our last general plan update. So there were some new concepts that didn't exist in our current general plan, such as complete streets or smart growth scenarios. And we really had the opportunity to take the best ideas from the individual CDPs and apply them at the countywide level. And so as an example of that, I can show you some of the Puna strategies that are being lifted up into our transportation section. And I'll just read a couple of these because they're kind of hard to see. So the Puna CDP said to consider roundabouts as a means to control private driveway access to major highways with higher traffic volumes, such as Highway 130. Considering the other CDPs and our research and analysis, we landed on this language, which says to prioritize intersection improvements with roundabout designs to incorporate safer access through intersections, steady flow of traffic, lower traffic speeds, and safer pedestrian crossings. So you can see that it's not exactly verbatim what Puna said, but it certainly came a lot from the Puna policy. Overall, as we look at all the different strategies in our draft, about 10% are coming directly from the Puna CDP. So there was some question about what happens kind of next to the CDPs once we update this general plan. And so we've been really thoughtful about that because that will be our next task as staff to work through this. And so as part of our planning system design, we were intentional about how that can be organized. And one of the things that we want to recognize is that the organization of the CDPs all needs to be standardized and consistent. And so those CDPs will be organized the same way that our general plan is. So right now you're looking at the general plan organization. So the updates to the CDPs will help us to reach that organization consistency. And there's also an opportunity when doing that to be sure that what the general plan natural resource section says and what the CDP natural resource section says are talking to each other because they're in the same categories. And finally, to help us with that transition, we're really looking at focusing on community-based implementation. I think Puna has been a standout community at showing us the action that community members can take and kind of rallying the troops to get things done. And so we're going to be proposing some changes to the action committee duties. Mostly it has to do with this facilitating better community awareness and participation, building proactive relationships and helping us network, and then providing a forum for folks to share information. So it's similar to the way the action committees have been operating, but it's a heavier focus on that relationship building, network building, facilitation role. And that's going to take some capacity. County's going to have to work on building capacity of our action committees to make that transition into that different role. But that's something that we're going to be doing together. Upcoming opportunities for the action committee to participate in this general plan draft review. We'll be releasing the draft officially out into the public end of July, beginning of August. We'll be holding community speakouts. So what you see here tonight is, we're calling it a mini speakout because it's a small version of the big process that we're going to have in August. And we're definitely going to need some assistance in getting the word out and maybe some participation from you folks too, if you are inclined. Then in September, based on the information that we gather from those speakouts, we're going to be hosting topic workshops. And those are going to be really driven on discussing main topics. And so tonight what you're going to see is there's a wide range of topics that you can focus on and talk story about. But on those topic workshops, it's going to be very specific and very detailed about particular topics that are of interest to people. And obviously we can't go on every topic, but when we start to get feedback from these speakouts, and there's a lot of interest in particular topics, those are going to be the ones that we then host these individual topic workshops on. And then finally, we're going to be doing community meetings out in smaller communities that we don't normally get to, different than the typical public meeting venues. So it's going to be smaller venues where communities can come and participate and not have to drive a long ways to get there. And finally, all of this information is being collected on the comments and feedback of the draft. And so after those community meetings, about a month after that, we'll be closing the public comment period and revising the draft based on the feedback that we get before it would be submitted to the planning commissions. Okay, so speak out. What is a speak out? It's a fun and interactive way for community members to contribute and engage with the planning process. It's really an open walkthrough workshop where participants can choose what they want to look at, how long they want to look at it. Maybe they only want to go to one section, maybe they want to go to all of them. Doesn't matter which order you go in, it's really open and free. You have that choice. It's an opportunity to be heard and share without time limits. John, I'm looking at you right now. We're not going to tell you only have 3 minutes. You can stay for the rest of the meeting if you want to.
I've only been meeting in this room for 25 years.
I know. All kidding aside, though.
The crime is committed right here.
All kidding aside, it's an opportunity to really voice what you have to say, and as long as it takes you to say it, maybe you can't get your thoughts out in 3 minutes. Fine. Let's take 10 minutes. Let's have a conversation. Let's take 15 minutes. It doesn't matter. There's no time limits, okay? The other thing is the comments can be recorded in many different forms. And so maybe you feel more comfortable talking story with somebody and we'll be jotting down our story as we talk. Or maybe you feel more comfortable writing your own comments and not having someone else listen to them. We have that option. Or maybe you see something that you really like and you just want to stick a little sticky note on there. That's another option that you have. So many different ways that you can comment and provide feedback. All of that content that you provide us is going to be compiled and organized into these different sections and is going to start our public comment compilation. And all of that will be taken into consideration after the public comment period closes. when we start doing revisions to the draft. And we have done this before with both the adoption of Ka'u and Hamakua. When we did those CDPs, we went out to those communities in a speak out format like this. Got amazing, tons of feedback, first of all, and then great reviews from the folks who went through the process. So that's why we're trying to introduce it again through this process. As I mentioned, today is a mini version of that. It is only a sample portion of the GP draft content. There was no way to effectively move you guys through the whole draft in a 2-hour format. So we're giving you a sample, but it's an opportunity for the action committee to get familiar about what this process is. It's an opportunity for the county to test this process as we plan for those larger events in August. And it's an opportunity to build capacity among our staff and communities on this process. The content that we chose to share with you tonight is really about making Hawaii Island a great place to live. We tried to focus on sections of the draft that impact our daily lives, more so than some of our more lofty sections that we have. And some of this came to fruition through a early meeting that we had with Mayor Kim. He impressed his vision of creating a great place to live first, then a great place to do business, then a great place to visit. And so tonight we're focusing on how do we make it a great place to live. And so the content that we're sharing with you is looking at hazards and climate change, the different water system resources, multimodal transportation and connectivity, equitable and safe housing options, active living, and healthy and safe communities. A little bit of orientation about what you're going to see on the boards. We have overarching goals for each section. We have sustainability objectives that are going to be used to measure our progress. They're supposed to be SMART. If you notice that they're not, please let us know that. And the time that we're looking at, so SMART means that those objectives are specific, they're measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And time-bound for this plan is, it's a 25-year plan. And then also on the boards are sample policies organized into clusters so that you can easily focus on the content. What is not on the boards, there's still some overarching aspirational policies that we didn't include because of space limitations. The implementing actions are not on the boards. Those are code amendments, new projects, new programs. So that's going to be the implementation section of our general plan. The comprehensive planning framework that I spoke about, those elements are not on the boards tonight. Evaluation and monitoring, so monitoring those actions and our progress on the objectives. That's a whole lot of narrative and detail that's in the draft that's not on the boards tonight. And maps are not on the boards tonight. So all this is to say, because this is a mini version, we couldn't include everything, but everything will be part of our larger Speak Out events in August. Okay, I'd like to introduce our planning team and consultant that will be helping us through this process. Myself, Bethany Morrison. We have April Supernaut. We have Keiko Mercado. Natasha Soriano. Heather Bartlett. And we have Research and Development Volunteers Bob Agress. And Kara Bacher, and Audrey Robeson. And finally, we have help from the Hawaii Alliance for Community-Based Economic Development, also known as HACFED. We have Brent Kakasako here. We have Keoki Noji. And we have Eden Jablon. Okay. So, all of these folks are playing different roles in tonight's event. We have resource people available if those resource people can raise their hands. Okay, so these resource people are going to be at these stations, and they are helping to facilitate and provide, be able to answer questions that you have, clarifying questions, information about that topic, where can I get more information, those kind of questions can come to the resource people. Also at each station we have recorders. Recorders, if you can raise your hands. Okay, so these recorders are going to be listening to everything you have to say and recording it, word by word, if that's your preference. If that's not your preference, we have other options for you providing the feedback. There's Post-its that you can put on the poster boards. There is green feedback forms that you can fill out. And again, you can sit with a listener recorder and they can jot down. You can also, if you want to, you can have a pen and record your own thoughts on the chart paper. That's fine too. It's really an opportunity to engage with each other, talk story with each other. Hey, Hannah, come look at this. What do you think of this, Paul? It's about that. It's not about this being some heavy county-driven process. It's about it being community, and we're all learning and sharing together. Just a few friendly reminders. This is a working draft. The meeting will end tonight at 7, so we'll have about an hour to get through this, through these stations. You don't have to go to every station. You can just choose one or two that are particularly interesting to you if you want. But that gives you a time frame to plan for. And that's what I have. So with that, we're gonna transition over to the fun stuff. There are refreshments and food. Carol from Blue Zones, thank you for bringing us some snacks over here. And let's get started. Find the station.